Now, on 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app. O'Connor and Company.
All right, let's keep this momentum going here. It's our fourth hour of this morning show, and if you missed any of the first 3 hours, please subscribe to our podcast, download it, so you won't miss a darn thing. Coming up in 30 minutes, Tim Carney penned a column at the Washington Examiner about how Fairfax Commonwealth Attorney Steve Descano refuses to clean up the county with regard to brothels openly operating. And there's a whole lot of exploitation, sex trafficking going on there, but Steve Descano is A-OK with it. Tim Carney coming up in 30 minutes. I'm Larry O'Connor. That's Julie Gunlock. Good morning, Julie.
Good morning.
And it's a Thursday at 8 o'clock, so we've got KT McFarland joining us. KT, good morning. Good to talk with you as always.
It's always a pleasure to be with the two of you.
So where to begin? I'm sure you saw the scandal of the New York Times posting a photograph on their cover amplifying the plight of starving children in Gaza. But, of course, what ended up being the truth of the matter is that they cropped out a perfectly healthy, well-fed child standing in the same room as this so-called starving child. The starving child, it turns out, actually had a pre-existing medical condition that was way more complicated than any concern about food for children. But as is usual with the New York Times, the lie is heard around the world multiple times before the truth can put its keffiyeh on. And so now there's a lot of pressure on Israel. You've got France now acknowledging the Palestinian state, so-called. The UK is threatening to do the same. KT, it almost seems like these countries and the New York Times want to reward Hamas for the October 7th massacre by giving them exactly what they wanted.
You think seems like? Look, Europe has always been anti-Semitic. Europe is anti-Semitic. It's anti-Israel. Anybody who's traveled here, I was in London like a month ago, and I was stunned at the absolute Jew hatred that is there. And just from average people. This is not, radical Muslim extremists from parts of West London. No, this is like average people. They hate Israel. They hate the Jews. They think the Palestinians are noble people. They understand why Hamas has done what it's done. They sympathize with Hamas. It's just, it's an upside-down world. And the New York Times, in conjunction with some of the European leaders, the French President Macron, others recognizing the Palestinian state. There's no Palestinian state. Who's Palestine? Where are the people? Right. What are their borders? Who are the leaders? There is no cohesive Palestinian anything, and yet they want a virtue signal. Now, part of it is because of, again, it's the anti-Semitism. Part of it, though, is virtue signaling to the percentage of their population, which has now become quite powerful thanks to their open border policy. And they now have a very increasingly large Muslim, anti-Semitic, anti-Israel part of their population that they're appealing to for electoral purposes.
Yeah, KTO, just going back to this sort of the reporting on this starving child. The New York Times put this out, got millions of retweets and attention on this story, and then the correction was put in a separate section that only has, something like a couple thousand subscribers. The U.S. media, this isn't just the New York Times, and you've addressed the sort of anti-Semitism that's at play there. But what is the answer for this? Is it just alternative media? There just seems to be this constant narrative that Israel is doing such harm to the so-called Palestinian people. How do you reach, there obviously people on the right, they come to us, or they come to, Daily Wire or other alternative media sources. But there are persuadable Democrats. There are reasonable Democrats still out there. If there's a few, how do we switch that so that their news sources aren't so warped and sending such a to me a very dangerous anti-Semitic, anti-Jew, anti-Israel message?
Joey, this is the hard part, because as a conservative, you don't want suppression of free speech. Right. But on the other hand, you see how it's being twisted. I come down on the side of, okay, let's cut the NPR funding. Let's do all the things so at least we're not paying for them to do their malign activities. But when it comes to the case of journalist outlets, New York Times, Washington Post, name your channel, the fact that they're spewing lies intentionally, whether it's the Russia hoax, whether it's the Jew hatred, whether it's the anti-Israel, pro-Hamas position, I think that time will tell. And for the sake of freedom of speech, I'm willing to let them, go on spewing their nonsense, knowing, as you look at now the numbers and the finances, they're going broke.
Yeah, that's a healthy attitude.
The New York Times, flee. You know where the only part of the New York Times that's growing is its cooking section. Or it's crossword puzzle. Nobody's reading the New York Times.
It is very good, by the way, the cooking section.
Yeah, good recipes
there. Yeah, it is.
There.
Actually, it is good. I use it too. But the Washington Post, the people, even reporters, are fleeing because. Yeah. So I think at the end of the day, the truth will out. I've always been a believer that if you let enough voices speak, if you let everybody speak, the people themselves are actually having an enormous amount of common sense, and they're ditching those places in staggering rapid numbers. The collapse of the legacy media is an unwritten story, but when we look back a year or two from now, when we think, the Washington Post and the New York Times are going to come begging for some kind of subsidies, it's a real telling thing that people voted with their pocketbooks.
KT, let's pivot over to trade, specifically the talks that are going on with China. Of course, President Trump engineered a stunning achievement with the EU trade deal. And then immediately, Treasury Secretary Bessent took up high-level negotiations with China in Switzerland. It was in Geneva. Mm-hmm. He's now back briefing the president. What do you think the end game here is? I keep hearing that they're trying to set up a monumental deal and then a state visit where President Trump will go to Beijing and sign with his counterpart Xi Jinping. Do you expect that to happen?
Yes. And here's why. President Trump understood one fundamental thing that politicians kind of glazed over, which is that other countries need to sell their goods into the American market a whole lot more than we needed to buy their stuff. We have alternatives. We can buy stuff from India instead of China. So every country needs to sell their goods into the United States or they go broke. 10 years ago, that was not the case. Europe had a growing economy. Europe was buying things. China was thought to be a consumer society. None of it has worked out for a whole lot of reasons. The Americans are the only people with the money and the willingness to spend that money. And now that we have economic growth, which is stunning so much of the world, we have 3% economic growth really on the promise of President Trump's advances. And once you get the tax cuts that kick in, the energy resources that kick in, and the trade deals, we're going to be off to the races. We're going to have economic growth the world hasn't experienced in decades. And so as a result of that, if you're China, if you're India, if you're the United Kingdom, whatever your country is, you need a trade deal with the United States. And so, yes, I think at the end of the day, China may be the last one to do it, but at the end of the day, we will have a trade deal, and it will be on our terms, and it'll be to our great advantage.
Real fast, were you concerned about the decision to not allow the president of Taiwan to be in New York en route to meetings in Latin America? That many people thought that was sort of an indication that we were acquiescing to China in the midst of these trade talks.
I would say Donald Trump takes the long term. Am I upset about it? No, because I think at the end of the day it works out. If that's a sticking point in the middle of these very sensitive negotiations, I'm less concerned than the final outcome, which is the United States is going to be economically stronger. China's going to be in a position where it's not going to make as much trouble. And in the long run, it's probably better for the prospects for the country independence of Taiwan if this goes on.
Thank you, KT. Always a good conversation on a Thursday. Thank you.
Thank you.
It is 8:15.
WMAL, making sense of the news. Live from the Home Paramount Pest Control Studios. Home Paramount, the leader in pest control since 1939.
We touched on this interview that Wes Moore has now deigned to give. It's amazing. He barely talks to the media at all, and of course the media loves him for it. It's amazing how that works. He has sat now for an interview, a podcast with a really, really tough interviewer, the former chairman of the Democrat National Committee, Jamie Harrison. And in it, we played this earlier, but I do want to reflect on it again. Here he is lamenting the systemic racism against black men in this country, which, again, I just want to point out, Wes Moore was somehow able to overcome that. Wes Moore was somehow able to achieve, but all you other you normal black men, you don't stand a chance. But Wes Moore is gifted. Wes Moore is chosen. Wes Moore is anointed. No, Wes Moore had parents who put him in a private school and steered him toward a military career. Will Wes Moore recommend that for normies in this country? No, sir. No. The only way to save black men in this country is to keep voting Democrat, apparently. Listen.
It is true that we have a justice system that has been targeting and weighted against black men. We have an education system that has been deliberate about the way that we are criminalizing and punishing black boys when we're watching the results of our young black boys continue to downgrade, and we are actually then turning around and blaming the black boys for their failure. Not the system, not the structure, but the young men. Yeah. Blaming them. We do have a system of employment where we make it more difficult for black men to be able to enter into the employment market. We do have a system that makes basically every sentence a life sentence, that when someone comes back from incarceration, we make it deeply challenging for them to be able to get public housing, challenging for them to be able to get a student loan, challenging for them to get a home loan, challenging for them to reintegrate with their families. And then we wonder what's going on with black men and why they're not voting for us.
Oh, man.
Now, listen, there is some truth to the fact that black men are sick and tired of Democrats constantly promising that, the only reason you're not achieving is because of systemic racism, but keep voting for us. The people who created the systemic racism, we're going to fix it. And then decades later, they keep saying the exact same thing. You're right. Black men said, enough of this. I'm getting off your plantation. I'm going to vote for Trump because he's actually offering me some more ideas, and he doesn't patronize me and condescend to me. So, that's not how Wes Moore would put it, but he sort of stumbled on the truth there, I would say.
But it is also, it's 2.0. It's restorative justice. It's Obama's Education Secretary Arne Duncan writing a memo saying you got to get rid of detention, you got to get rid of expulsion, you got to go to this sort of, let's sit in a circle and talk about why our feelings are hurt kind of justice that conveyed to kids that there's no such thing as punishment, that you can get away with anything. That's why we saw the increase of assaults on teachers and the violence in schools, and they never want to take any blame for that. So this is just Obama 2.0. He clearly sees this as the way forward.
Well, in this, especially the education system, the National Education Association and the American Federation of Teachers is the education system in this country, and the Democrats have empowered them at every step for the last 60 years.
Well, and also, if you have a problem with the education system in this country, then before school choice, so those black families can get out of this racist education system and go to a place that they want to go.
Which is Wes Moore had the opportunity to do when he went to a private school. And just to be clear, he keeps saying the system does this, the system does that, the system. It's his system. It's his party's system. For God's sake, he's the governor of Maryland, where Democrats have been dominant for decades.
Literally, the argument is the system is bad, support the system.
Right. Vote for me so I can keep building the system. All right. So there's that. Then he had some word salad about Kamala Harris where he refuses to explain why Kamala Harris didn't do well. He can't say that Kamala Harris is terrible because he's just a party hack. And then, speaking of word salad, listen to this one, Cut 32, where Wes Moore explains how the Democrats need to fix their message. I love that it's always the messaging, not what they stand for. And by the way, when Democrats say we have a problem with messaging, what it means is voters are too stupid to understand how great Democrats are. So here we go, Cut 32.
Thing I think we have to remember to do, though, is I've been deeply disappointed where it feels like there's certain areas and communities that we almost seemingly just gave up on.
Yeah.
Like we just stopped competing. We stopped making the case. We came up with this philosophy where, listen, it all comes down to 3 states.
We cede ground.
We ceded ground, man.
Yeah.
And it's like, do you know who hears this thing is only going to come down to 3 states? The other 47.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, we don't even matter, man. When we hear, what, we need to make sure we go after the working voter in Pennsylvania, and that is the key. Do you know who hears that? Everybody who you're not talking about.
Yeah. Yep.
And I just think we ceded a lot of ground. And I think that if we talk about who was the base, Who are the people who've always showed up for the Democratic Party? Who are the people who were just simply trying to make a way for their families? And now somehow they are not a tier one priority for a political party. And then it just feels like for a lot of people, it's like, yo, this really is just a game, isn't it?
People feel taken for granted.
Completely. And then we get upset and then we're like, what happened with this group? What happened with that group? It's like, yo, and they're saying like, yo, what happened to the party?
Yeah.
And
By
so,
the way, can I just point out the irony that the person who was interviewing him and agreeing with him was the chairman of the Democratic National Committee for the last 4 years? I mean, what? Absolute nonsense. But there you go. That's your Wes Moore. He's your governor of Maryland, and he really, really wants to be president. And George Clooney really wants him to be president. So
yes, this is the promising candidate.
It is 8:24.
Coming up, we're going to talk to Washington Examiner senior columnist Tim Carney. He's got a really interesting story about something going on in his neighborhood and why Steve Descano doesn't seem to care. Keep it here. It's 8:30.
WMAL-FM, Woodbridge, Washington, a Cumulus media station. Making sense of the news. News Talk 105.9. News now. Now on 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app. O'Connor and Company.
It's 8:37 as our morning continues to just fly by, as did the month of July, for that matter, this 31st day of the month. Coming up in 30 minutes, we're going to hand it off to Chris Plant. But first, Julie Gunlock and I have the pleasure of welcoming Tim Carney, columnist at the Washington Examiner. Tim, good morning. Thanks for joining us. Timothy. Mr. Carney,
hello.
Is your phone on mute? There you go. Hello. How are you? All right, one more time. Tim Carney, you there?
How are you, Larry?
Thank you.
There we go.
I read with great interest your article. One of the things that you're pointing out here is something that I think is not talked about enough in our society. We all know that it's happening. We see it happening. It's these so-called massage parlors, which are obviously fronts for prostitution, and they are exploding in Fairfax County, and you think it's because of Steve Descano.
Yeah, so Steve Descano has made it clear that when he doesn't like the law, he will not enforce it. He wrote this about abortion when Roe was overturned. He said, I took an oath of office to protect my community from those who broke the law. The real threat, I now realize, may stem from those who write the law. And back then he said, no matter what the law is, I'm not going to enforce it on abortion. And then you look at, he's obviously a Soros prosecutor, and you look at what George Soros has done with his money, and he has been trying to legalize prostitution. And so when the local cops tell the neighbors, hey, look, we know this is a brothel in my neighborhood. So there's a brothel about a mile away from my house in Falls Church on a residential street. And the local cops say, hey, we know it's a brothel, but our hands are tied. The only way that I can understand that is to say, okay, they know that Steve Descano is not going to bring the felony charges against the operators of this den of prostitution.
And Tim, this isn't the only one. According to a county supervisor, there are about 80 to 100 illicit massage businesses that are operating in plain sight. And he was talking about Fairfax County and the surrounding areas. That's a lot.
Yeah, just Fairfax County alone. Now, there might be a range of these, right? Like some people, you hear illicit massage business. Some of them are going to be, it's actually a massage parlor where the people know how to do massages. But then there are like extra services or something like that. But this one, I wrote an article in the Examiner a couple weeks ago, the Falls Church brothel, and in it, what I described, like there's no massages on offer here. It is just about selling sex, and so again, it's operating in plain sight. When I started the reporting on it, I walked up to neighbors and I said, I'm here to write about, and the woman cut me off and said, the brothel across the street. There you
go, yeah.
There's no mystery to what this business is. If you check the website, if you Google the phone number, and I do not recommend for the sake of your browser history that you do these things. You used to read my article at the Examiner, and you don't have to click on all the links. And if you do that, there's no doubt that that's what's going on. And so, again, Toscano just doesn't want to prosecute it seems. So when I asked his office about it, they would not commit to even participating in the misdemeanor charges. So cops brought misdemeanor charges, but a lot of times Toscano leaves it to the cops to do their own prosecuting in court. And when I asked the cops if Toscano was going to help on it, they said, well, ask Toscano. And when I asked his office, they didn't respond.
So I want to pull on that thread a little bit further. You talked to the cops. How did they feel about this? I mean, from both a morale standpoint, but also just, protecting potentially these young women that are in these massage parlors that are most likely being trafficked or abused. How do the cops, the police officers respond to that?
So, I mean, on that latter point, it's noteworthy that my neighbors who have seen, just the other day, I saw the proprietor of the business, not the landlord of the building, that's a different story, but the woman who's the madam, I guess. I saw her outside. You can see John's going in. None of the neighbors have ever seen the masseuses going in or out. So they live there, or they're transported in a van or something. And so the police want to bust this place up. Now, they're only willing to be so frank with me on the record, but with the neighbors, when they are talking, with a little more privacy, they really are upset. They want to bust this place up. But if you're a cop, you can't get somebody for a felony if the prosecutor doesn't have your back.
Wait, they don't want to go on record with you because they're afraid of repercussions from the Commonwealth's Attorney's Office?
Oh, I imagine that would not improve relationships if they did that. So they talk to the neighbors and then talk to me.
Cops who want to enforce the law and actually keep the community safe, and that would put them on the wrong side of Steve Toscano. That says it all. There's also an immigration component to this, is there not?
Well, certainly. So the odds are that, almost none of these women are citizens, and that number of them are illegal. And trafficking.
And they're abused. They're basically they're brought into the country illegally, and they're used as sex slaves because they're told it's not like they can. They're told that if they try to run or try to go to authorities, they'll be deported. They're terrified, and so they're prisoners.
And so, but here's the thing: if Steve Toscano, if you listen to this, you can break up this brothel. You don't have to charge these women and tell them how to safely get back to China, okay?
Of course.
Because ICE is coming, if not, all right? I know people in the neighborhood have put in messages to the tip line. Guess what? They're not going to be treated as well by ICE as they will by you. So, the county should go, if they care about, if they're afraid that, Trump is going to mistreat these women, go and bust the place up, send them back to China now. Otherwise, It's going to be a much louder knock on the door.
Tim Carney's our guest. Quickly, Tim, Jason Miyares is the Attorney General. These are state laws they're violating. Can the Attorney General step in and do what the Commonwealth's Attorney isn't doing?
So, that's a great question. You should have on Miyares and ask him exactly that, because he knows who Steve Toscano is. He knows what kind of person this is, and he has been very open and very refreshing in talking about this. Yeah. And so that, I think, is the next question. Is the Attorney General, does he have the power to step in where the local prosecutor is refusing to execute his oath of office?
They've got to be able to. They've got to, even if it just utilizes the state police to make the bust instead of county, I would think, unless there's some sort of jurisdictional problem there. But there shouldn't be. Anyway, we'll bring that up with him. He's a frequent guest, and by the way, running for re-election, so might behoove him to address this. Thank you, Tim. Great stuff as always.
Thanks, Larry. Thanks, Julie.
Tim Carney, senior columnist, Washington Examiner. It's 8:44.
Later today on the Derek Hunter Show, Democratic leader Zoran Mondami is back from his Uganda wedding and trying to pretend he likes police. Will anybody fall for it? We'll talk about it at 3 o'clock on WMAL.
Absolutely insane story coming out of Danville, Virginia. City Councilman Lee Vogler, who was just elected recently, 38-year-old married father of two, became a councilman in Danville. He was set on fire yesterday in his office. A lunatic came in, doused him with gasoline, and set him on fire.
It's awful. Yeah. Apparently they knew each other.
Shotzi Michael Buck Hayes, 29-year-old, barged into Showcase magazine, a local monthly publication, and dumped 5-gallon bucket of gasoline on him. So, excuse me, it wasn't in his city councilman's office.
No.
It was in this magazine office.
5 gallons, Larry. My God. Apparently Vogler was able to escape out of the front of the building, and then the man who set him on fire, this Buck Hayes, followed him and torched him. So,
yeah, he was captured several blocks away, where he allegedly lit the local politician on fire. Authorities said Vogler and Hayes are known to each other, but added that the attack stems from some personal matter not related to his elected position or political affiliation. That's what the police are saying right now. He's been charged with attempted first-degree murder and aggravated malicious wounding, being held without bond in Danville City Jail. Absolute insanity. I'm sorry, what? You set someone on fire? Who does that?
Honestly.
Vogler was...
yeah.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was just saying, he was airlifted. The victim was airlifted. Vogler was airlifted to a hospital. He's being treated, they say, for severe burns. But I can't find anything on his current condition. But one can imagine 5 gallons of a flammable liquid and then being set on fire. He's no doubt suffering great pain.
Yeah. He's... Mr. Vogler, who is hospitalized, and the family is asking for your prayers for him. He was first elected in May of 2012. He was the youngest person ever elected to city council in the Commonwealth at the age of 24 years old. He just won re-election for his 4th term. And, in fact, he also serves on the Virginia Small Business Commission that Governor Glenn Youngkin appointed him to 3 years ago, and he's a member of the Virginia Young Republicans. Absolute nutso.
He's married. He's married, and he has 2 kids as well. So
we'll try to get some more information about this story as it develops. It's 8:52.